Good afternoon, everyone. It's a quiet group. It's almost feel like we're at church. Everyone's sitting to the back. We need to get everyone to come up so that we could get engaged. My name's Trey McMillian. I'm the Health and Life Sciences Solutions Lead at Dell. It's almost like a tongue twister when I was just saying it. To my kids, they call me Daddy. To my wife, I just fix any computer issues that she has. But from a Dell perspective, what that really means is I work with all our healthcare organizations. I work with, it's over 6,000 clients. I work with the major payers, which are Aetna, Humana, United Health Group, all the biotech companies and pharmaceutical companies. And we look at how we can leverage technology to transform the way they function. And so some of the information I'm going to share with you today is based on a study that we completed where we talked with the talk leaders and the thought leaders in the industry, and we said, what is telehealth going to look like in 2030, and how are we going to get there? So we'll definitely start by looking at the telehealth industry. We'll then discuss kind of what it will look like in the future, some of the key challenges, and then also the success stories and questions. From my perspective, when I look at telehealth, prior to joining Dell, I was the CIO at a healthcare organization. We're close to $3 billion in revenues, a couple of million patients that we took care of, et cetera. And when I was talking with our clinicians, it was really important to them to get into telehealth. So we were doing, the basics, teleradiology, telepsych, tele-ICU, et cetera. We weren't really doing remote patient monitoring that much. But the reason why we wanted to get into it, it wasn't really about the payments. We were jumping into it because we wanted to reduce the amount of readmissions that we were getting. My organization was dedicated to the quality of care. Also, another piece was we really felt that our patients, they were able to get better by being closer to home. So sometimes when you service a rural area, you would bring in patients from hundreds of miles away. You would care for them in your ER, your ED department, but none of their family would be able to take care of them. No one would be able to come see them, or it would be every couple of days. We noticed that some of those patients that didn't have those high acuity issues, that when they were at home getting care that they needed, they actually got better a lot faster. And then the last piece was a lot of them were just frequent flyers. With the frequent flyers, they were really driving up the cost within our health system for caring for these patients. And so when I worked with the CFO and we did a cost-benefit analysis, it was much more beneficial to take care of them at home, provide them with the technology that they needed, than having them come into our EDs and have to pay $5,000 to $10,000 and not get reimbursed. So those were the key reasons that were driving us to remote patient monitoring. A lot of the technologies you see up there are ones that are prevalent today in our society. VSee, 3 years ago I met Milton when Dell was pulling together a talk track at HIMSS, and that's one of the products that we help push. But we also look at remote wound monitoring, home health, home rehab and exercise, and really what we're seeing is that a transformation is occurring in telehealth where it's not about just these devices that are on the periphery or on the outside, but there are patches that we're seeing that are going in patients on the back of their head or on their wrist. There's ingestible pills that are being placed inside some of our patients where we're able to send information back to the EMR. So with that then, we're seeing about 5 or 6 key technologies that are going to shape the way that telehealth is used in the future as a broader part of a connected health strategy. And with that, it's going to improve the engagement of our patients, it's going to improve the outcomes that we provide, and then be able to do it much more cost effectively. So with that, we call it basically a human-machine partnership that is beginning to take off within the industry. Very funny, I'm not sure if you can see this slide, but telehealth really started in 1925 or 1924, depending on who you're talking to. This provider here, he had the vision of using robotic arms to care for patients while he was actually placing a call to them. It's a little scary because if I was laying in a bed and those arms were caring for me, I don't think I'd be too excited about that. But things evolved over time, right? So in 1950, teleradiology, which has now become commonplace, to remote patient monitoring, which is very commonplace, to the future, which will be commonplace, where we as patients will become digital conductors. All of us today are already doing that. Many of the people in this room, as I look around, are leveraging Fitbits. That's sending tons of information into the EMR. When we talk with Judy and a team from Epic or Cerner, a lot of them are allowing the APIs to be open to capture that information. What we see is, in 2030, this is going to be the life of the people we care for. You're going to be a digital conductor with the various devices that you have as a part of your life. For this use case, it was Janine. She's a freelance designer. So as a designer, it's really important to get a look and feel for the setting that you're working with. So that's why you would leverage virtual reality for that, so that you can envision, so that you could be in that space as you're designing. With the previous discussion, they talked about AI assistants, whether it's Alexa or Microsoft or whoever. Those assistants are going to be helping you as you keep coordination of the tasks that you need to do. So many of the healthcare providers we're already talking to, they're saying, how can we leverage Alexa to be able to help doctors as they go through the workflow, through their work list? So some of the innovative ones are already working on those skunks projects. But from there, what we see is that you're going to be able to send alerts so that Janine, who's actually working on a project, she finds out that her aunt is actually sick. And how does she know? It's because she has a Telepresence robot in her room with her that monitors her vitals every day. And so based on her basically understanding that she's sick, the AI assistant was able to come up, help with the diagnosis, order the medications, and so that she can really let her aunt know that she was caring for her and that she cared about her. She ordered flowers, leveraging his drone so that it could be received in her house in about an hour. What we see is the vision of this becoming real within healthcare. And I know most people are like, no way, this isn't going to be reality. But Omni Labs has already created the Telepresence robot at a very cost-effective amount. And it's already able to do self-repairs and et cetera, and is being integrated in some of the homes in various areas. And then Honor, that we're working with, is already leveraging VR to kind of help with patients that have various different ailments so that the providers are able to actually see the world through their eyes. So how do we get there? The number one thing I learned when I was in healthcare is that we were probably about 10, 15, 20 years behind from a technology perspective than any of the other industries I worked in. And so that was a huge challenge. Another piece was around human change. I noticed that a lot of the people that were working in that environment had been there for many years, and so we had really become stuck in doing ways and seeing things from a certain point of view. The other piece is that financially, there was no reason to change. When I would talk to the CFO, he said, Trey, in the early 2000s, as long as I could spell healthcare, I was making money. So why am I going to try to change from fee-for-service to value-based, outcomes-based, et cetera, when I can stay very productive doing the things that we're doing? But just like other industries, if you don't change, you're going to get left behind. So when we look at companies like Kodak, does anyone ever use them anymore? No. DVD players, gone. Companies like Borders, changed significantly. What about retail? Changing. Amazon, I love what the CEO is doing there. He has a strategic plan to take out every aspect of how we do things today. What about grocery stores? everything that we do is starting to change because of the digital transformation, and healthcare is next. We're investing a lot of money building these very beautiful buildings, children's hospitals, etc. But is that really how we need to care for patients in the future? Or should we be making the investments in the technology, the processes, the people to be able to deliver care to them at any time, any place, anywhere? These are the key challenges you guys are well aware of in your industry within telehealth, the licensures, the reimbursements, the security, the compliance, etc. But what I want to do is help you see, how do you overcome that? In one of my roles at Dell, I'm responsible for looking at the portfolio of solutions that we have, creating an idea with my team, and then basically taking that to market. So we've had like 2 or 3 since I've been there. In a 2 or 3 year period, each one of them are generating separately as a BU between $50 and $150 million. What we do, though, to get there is that there's a formula. Everyone in here is doing their market analysis, so we don't need to discuss that. But how do you work with the healthcare organizations to get them on board? When I was in healthcare, I learned that there are only a handful of first movers. Everyone else is followers. So let me figure out who the first movers are. I'll just give you a few of them: the UPMCs, the Geisingers, the Mayos. Why don't I work with them and innovate, and then others are going to start to follow? That's at a global level or across the nation. In each of the regions, there's leaders as well. And so I figured out who those guys were. And each of them had champions within their organization, people who went against the status quo. And you can find them, right? There's providers that really smart, but everyone else thinks they're a pain in the ass because they're challenging people. They're not allowing you to basically just move forward with the same approach that you took in the past. And when you link up with them, they're able to drive change, whether it's with telehealth, whether it's with cloud, whether it's with AI, whether it's with advanced analytics within that organization. And then all of a sudden, the providers start to say, wow, you're caring for patients, you're doing it at a more cost-effective way, and you're doing better outcomes. And when you're able to present that data through peer review back to them, or that you're engaging your patients more, it's very funny how everyone starts to jump on board. And then the other organizations that are watching them in that locale, they start to ask questions and then start to basically want to be a part of that trend moving forward. And that's one of the ways that we kind of take ideas, we pilot them, we get market exception, and then we start to roll it out and really get broad adoption. So who's some of these companies we're working with? In my role, I love to partner with organizations like we're seeing in this room. I met some really great leaders since being here, and I'm very excited about when we get back what we can do together. But for one organization with the Alzheimer's research in UK, they created a VR technology, and what they realized is that for their patients, when you're looking at things through their perspective, the view is totally different for a provider than it is for that patient. So by creating algorithms and creating applications to allow you to see what they see, it helps you to be more empathetic and really be able to provide care at a higher level. And that's one thing that that organization is doing. In the UK, I get to travel a little bit. They were really focused on their first responders. And what we noticed is everyone's looking at, you know, the patient, et cetera, which is most appropriate. But when we're sending some of these first responders into these difficult situations to care for patients, you want to be able to track how they're doing. So we began to create a device that when they're out there responding, we want to track what your heart rate is, what your temperature is. And if you're in a situation where you need care, where you're basically being compromised, we're able to send alerts to say, hey, you're in over your head, come back, take a break, and get out of that situation so that they're not compromised during performing their job. Congestive heart failure. Many of the organizations from a healthcare standpoint for readmissions, if a patient is readmitted within 30 days, you're going to basically get penalized. So for CHF, you're going to want to send a technology home with these patients so that, one, you want to provide them with the best care, but two, you don't really want them coming back into your hospital if you don't have to. So one of the partners that we worked with created a technology that they're able to send home with them. They're able to provide them with the video technology so that anytime they need to communicate, they can track that, but then also provide better care. And what we're seeing there is we improved the outcomes for those cardiac patients, but also reduced readmissions. I mentioned earlier the ingestible pill. This is something we see that's really starting to take off as well, where individuals are ingesting these pills, and then you're able to kind of work and have multiple data feeds from these pills be tracked, whether it's temperature, whether it's blood pressure, et cetera, so that you can really keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on within an individual. And I know we're saying we may not be ready for AI, but what I'm seeing with some of these organizations and the platforms that they have running on top of Hadoop, there's some really great things that are being done from a predictive and prescriptive medicine. And then last but not least, we really want to simplify patient monitoring. I shared with you that there are many patients now who have the patches on their wrist, they have the patches on their necks, and from a biometric standpoint, they're able to track a lot of these information for these patients to help them care. And with where we see the industry going from a pharmaceutical perspective, where there's a huge focus on the efficacy of drugs, on real-world experiences being used, as well as with the biotech firms where they're doing a ton of work with genome sequencing, we see the vision of healthcare truly changing in the way that we care for our patients. I truly believe that 80% of the work that doctors are doing today will be able to be standardized, leveraging evidence-based medicine, protocols that have been established by people like Johns Hopkins, Cleveland Clinic, et cetera. And then only the 20% that are really these complex cases would be really pushed to that path. And many of my providers that we worked with, we called it working at the appropriate level within their practice. And that's what we see at Dell as the vision, and we want to work with companies like yourself to actually take us there. That's it.
So you mentioned that in 2030, we will, telehealth and technology will be ubiquitous. When do you think the tipping point is going to be where it's really going to start adopting?
That's a great question. I would say probably around 2019 to 2020, we're going to see an increase in the amount of telehealth being leveraged. I personally don't think it's being, from a strategic standpoint, a lot of the key organizations, they're not really 100% on board yet. They're still kind of lagging, and we need to kind of see them really embrace it, adopt it, and then also the great work, I like what Epic is doing, making virtual visits a part of their platform, Cerner and others doing the same. When you make it become embedded, I think it's going to drive and increase adoption. But I still think we're about 2 to 3 years away from a telehealth perspective.
Thank you very much for that informative talk. I was just curious, what is the typical scale of the types of companies that you tend to partner with? Do you also partner with the earliest stage startups, or how does it work?
Yeah, I partner with all different firms, but we use our time wisely. So for me, there was one company I worked with, they probably had 5 employees. They were in Silicon Valley, but their technology was so revolutionary from a AI perspective that we had to jump in. I would say normally the smallest is anywhere between 3 and 5 million in revenues, but it's only going to be a handful of those that can really transform and help organizations. Because when I partner, it's not just me. I have 3,000 people in the sales force, so I want to be able to take your solution and bring it to mass scale. So any size organization we'll work with, but I'm really looking for ones that are special and really looking to change the way we do business.
Thank you. Are you looking at companies in the AI space apart from diagnostics and care at the operations side of hospitals? AI that can go in and actually help streamline the operational part? It's about 25% of all costs.
Yes. Are you the anesthesiologist? Okay.
No.
All right. But long story short, yes. I'm trying to find them because I need to talk to them.
Okay.
But yes, we're focused on that. We believe in a perioperative surgical home, and we've worked with a small startup in that space to start leveraging technology to help really improve outcomes. So it's from reaching out to the patients before they come in to optimize care. A lot of times that's impacting case cancellations, that's impacting the outcomes. Also, we realize that the reusability of tests are huge. And not a lot of organizations are doing this, but we realized that if someone had a STEM 7 test, if these certain factors did not occur, why are you continuing to order these same tests month after month? So we were able to create a protocol, which we call lab recycling, to actually reduce the amount of care there. But short answer is yes, the focus is on either the patient-centered medical home or perioperative surgical home.
Right, but in operations, what I'm talking about is more like the billing side, registration, scheduling, all of the costs that are largely human-based now and human-controlled.
So huge focus on revenue cycle management,
Right.
but then also we call it supply chain optimization. So there's basically 7 key capabilities across the healthcare organization, and those are 2 of them that we have a huge focus on. Tons of use cases, claims optimization, you name it. So that's
Okay.
what a lot of organizations are looking to tackle because it's low-hanging fruit.
Thanks, Trey.
Thank you. No. I'm just kidding.
So Dell, I mean, yeah. So I mean, you guys are so broad. So I was wondering if you have any advice. I mean, so telehealth is pretty broad, right? There's all sort of application there. Like, if you were to give advice to some small companies, say, like, what are the area in telehealth that so like the market is right, easy to sell to, like right now?
I don't see it being easy to sell to, but I think remote patient monitoring is kind of low-hanging fruit because it's easier for organizations to adopt. So if you have a solution in that space and you go in and speak with the director, VP of telehealth, et cetera, they're really focused on that. If you're doing anything around patient engagement, huge, because most of the senior leaders we talk to, there's 3 key buzzwords, right? And that's one of them. So if you can tie your solution to that, they're willing to jump on board. Last but not least, the challenge is, can you show an ROI within less than 12 months? In any use case that you're able to show that positive ROI, bring that forward, because the CFO, CIO, CMO, they're going to look to tackle those. So show the value for your solution, and if you can, most of them will jump on board. Thank you.